I call this Bryan Independent School District Workshop to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 12:02 p.m. We want to extend a warm welcome to everyone, and just a reminder to please turn off the sound on all your electronic devices if you have not already done so. Right. We are going to start with local governance and honoring the legacy of Merrill Green. And we welcome our trustee Ruthie Waller on this one.
Well, are you going to add to me, Ms. Carabine, I'm sure?
I can't.
Yes.
Yes, I think we could all say a lot because
Yes.
we've really enjoyed celebrating his legacy.
My particular part of this is I grew up with Coach Green's daughters, and he was the coach at the high school when I was in high school, and then he gave me my first coaching job, and so we coached together for a long time until he retired, and then he got on the board. So it's been kind of amazing. I mean, I'm nothing near Coach Green, but it's just amazing how our paths have kind of followed. And I remember when I wanted to run for the board, he was the person I called. And I said, give me some advice. What do you think? And he said, you know, one thing, don't go in there so wide-eyed that you think you know everything about it just because you've been in the business so long. He said, listen and learn. And he knew me pretty well. So I'll just never forget Coach Green and his family. I want to thank some particular people for the amazing work and effort they put into the celebration of his life that we had at Merrill Green Stadium Friday night. And then this weekend, Rudder will also be celebrating his life in the stadium. All the football players have MG decals, both schools, on their helmets. The people that I know, and if I've left anybody out, they can text me and I'll say their name and thank them at the night meeting. But these people worked so very hard to let the Green family know how much we appreciate, care, love, and respect them. Derek Rush, Josh, and I can't go into every detail that everybody did, or of course I'd take up the whole meeting, but these people worked so hard. Derek Rush, Josh Woodall, Alec Morales, Chris Gibson, and all the stadium staff that he gathered for the event, Ginger Carabine, Hugo Ybarra, Clay Falls, Chelsea Katz, Callie Donnelly, Brian Merrill, Lane Boobin, Maria Fields, and of course, last but not least, Lester Banks. And if you know anybody I left off accidentally, you let me know and we'll give them a shout out at our night meeting. And Coach Green's funeral is tomorrow. There's some glorious things that are going to happen during and after his funeral. Again, to celebrate his life. I could just go on and on. But thanks to all these people that really gave his family just a goosebump experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. I'll just add very briefly, not only was he a high school football coach and our athletic coordinator for the campus and director, but he was a board member, but just a man of integrity. I'm involved with the Bryan Rotary, and he was a very involved Rotarian. He served as local president and district governor, I believe. So there are lots of stories from the Rotarians, the citizens, his church, the school community, and on and on and on. So it was really a wonderful night, as you declared Friday night, getting to meet his family and honoring his legacy. So it was just a great celebration in our entire community. So thank you for bringing that up tonight.
All right, go ahead.
I'll say a few words. I had the honor of serving on the board with him for 12 years. That probably doesn't surprise most of you, know I've been on the board for a while. So, but he and I here shared one trait in particular. We're both hard-headed, but we didn't always agree. But the remarkable thing is that to me at least is that when we didn't agree, we talked about it. In fact, he kind of got onto me at one point, and then ended up calling me that evening and just saying, "Oh, I was really out of line, and I apologize." And it just sort of his humility on top of all of his wonderful contributions in every respect that have already been mentioned was kind of unusual for folks that sometimes when they get to the point in their lives where they've done so much, they seem to lose that trait. And he was incredible, and we became probably after that really very close in terms of our friendship. And I was very pleased to be able to serve all those 12 years with him.
Thank you. All right, any other? Well, it was a wonderful event Friday night under the lights of Merrill Green, and again, we wish to extend our condolences to the family, our thanks to all those who made that event possible, and we look forward to doing it again, I guess, on Friday night as Rudder plays on Friday. All right. We'll now move into some information items. First, we have an enrollment and attendance update. We welcome our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Kevin Besaw, our Executive Directors of School Leadership, Brian Merrill, and Linda Montoya.
Are we? Okay. All right. Thank you. Today we're going to talk about attendance and enrollment, as Dr. Harlan said. Just a little bit about how we get where we are with the enrollment numbers and those kind of things. If we go forward to the next slide. So normally we'll look at a demographic study. We have demographers that we'll use usually every couple of years or more often than that if needed. For example, when we did realignment a few years ago, of course that was a big factor to have them look at where the students are, where they go to school currently, where they'll go in the future. Also with the addition of a school like we just did with Sadbury. That was another example of having a demographer help us to redraw those lines and try to balance our enrollment and things like that. What they do is they take a look at a lot of things, a lot of information, but the main things they'll look at is the enrollment history. They look at pending building permits, where's the areas that are growing and shrinking or they're aging out, for example. Students are moving on. Birth rates, economic factors like job growth, things like that are coming to the community where those things are taking place. And just things like that, and be able to project our enrollment for where they feel that we're going to be. And generally, you can see they project out for us like 10 years. So they actually have a really sophisticated model that they use to produce that. And then we can go back every couple of years again and update those and look at them. I'll let Dr. Merrill talk
absolutely.
about that.
I direct your attention to the projected enrollment. You can see that we are stable, relatively stable for all the way through 2031, 2032. And you'll look at, because of where we sit in 24, 25, we actually have the historical information there. So the line item below that, you can compare what they projected to what our actual historical, just representation of numbers. And they're really within a 1% difference. It's pretty accurate, to be honest. These individuals, the demographic company, they do work all over the state. And so they constantly are modeling and bringing that information and then looking specifically at what's happening in the Brazos Valley. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all model. They're going to look at everything having to do with Bryan, all of really the birth rates, anything that's a factor in that, and then that obviously will alter what they believe is going to take place. And then you can see our current enrollment for 24-25, again, is 1% difference between the two. And so there's definitely a lot of things happening in Bryan. We see a lot of permitting and construction and those types of things, but there are multiple factors that go into whether or not students enroll in our schools. And so that's just an interesting phenomenon all over the state, and then something that's not untrue for Bryan. And so a lot of times that's just difficult to kind of understand with all the construction that's going on at the same time. You know, sometimes the city's growing at a different rate than a school district's growing. They can have two different growth rates, to be completely honest with you. And many communities are like that, and I think we're like that in particular.
Dr. Merrill, I'm sorry. How often do they adjust the numbers? Is that annual?
Yes, so we bring them back
Yeah,
regularly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so then this is, we do have board policy on looking at this, of course, monitoring capacity, utilization, and properties at different times if we're going to be expanding or exactly monitoring where the growth is in an area. But Bryan ISD board policy FC talks about the school attendance areas, and that a school should be considered adequately utilized so long as its enrollment falls between 80% and 120% of its capacity. So generally, what we're looking at right now, we look at this annually, but what we're looking at right now is I don't think we have any that are even approaching 100%. We have a few that are actually a little below the 80%, so we would look at that right now. But that's something that we look at and monitor. And if we get to a point where something is getting, one school, for example, is getting a little fuller, then we can always look at redrawing some boundaries or doing something like that, as opposed to if it's not a district-wide enrollment issue, then we wouldn't have to look at billing a school or something like that. We could redraw lines and move people.
Okay, so I will give a little attendance update. So we're into year 2 of our attendance campaign. We started off this year with the attendance calendar magnets, which we provided for every family so that they can track their child's attendance throughout the year. And we feel like it's just critical for ongoing communication with our parents through newsletters, through any kinds of handouts that we can provide them. We're continuing with our slogan, our sort of success, 9 days or less, but exemplary is best, and that's 3 days or less. But our focus is on improved attendance. We know that perfect attendance is often difficult. If a child gets sick one time, they miss out on perfect attendance. So our focus is really on improved attendance from the year prior. So this graph is showing our attendance rates at each campus. These are as of October 4th. We ended the 23-24 school year at 93.79%. That was district-wide. District-wide, as of October 4th, we were sitting at 95.37%. And so I went back to look at last year where we were on October 4th. And so we were at 94.90. So this year we're at 95.37. So that's an improvement, which is great. This next graph is showing chronic absenteeism, the chronic absenteeism rate by campus as of October 4th. And if you remember, chronic absenteeism is when a child misses 10% or more of the days that we're in attendance. So over the course of a school year, a child would be chronically absent if they missed 18 or more days. So we ended the school year, the 23-24 school year at 17.8% chronically absent. And we're hoping to do better this year. And I'll give you an example of one of the things that one of our principals is doing. So over at Neal Elementary, Mrs. Ontiveros we gave the campuses who their chronically absent kids were for last year. So she pulls her chronically absent kids from last year, and she meets with them every morning, and they color in their chart. So if they're absent, they get to color in their chart. And those kids that were chronically absent, and some of them had missed like up to 40 days, she had several that had perfect attendance for the first 6 weeks, and just super excited that they got to celebrate and be part of their attendance celebration. These are just some of the things that the campuses are doing. If you'll see the picture there with Henderson Elementary, that very first picture, they did a dance party. So the grade level with the best overall attendance in the month of August, they did a dance party, and they also got movie theater popcorn from Premier. They donated some popcorn. And then Davila Elementary, if you see their little picture there on the bottom, they are sharing their attendance data, and most campuses are, daily. They put it out on posters so that the kids, the parents, the staff, they can all see what their attendance rate is, and then they share it over morning announcements as well. They're keeping attendance the focus. Mitchell Elementary on October 3rd, Sherry Hedstrom, they had an attendance goal of 96%. They surpassed that goal, and what they had chosen for Miss Hedstrom to do would be to wear a snake around her neck or arm or whatever for the entire day.
That's asking a lot.
She carried that snake from room to room and shared it with the kids. I think the snake's name was Monty Python, so carried it from room to share with the kids.
Yeah, another example is MC Harris, you'll see there, and that's the eSports Club. I think that made the social media account. And it's really anything that would spark a kid's interest. So anytime we can find something they might be interested in, we want to try to use that to get them to come to school. And MC Harris is obviously a different campus, and so you kind of have to think outside of the box, although we have eSports at other schools as well. But that's definitely one that you look at that's sort of a niche and has appeal to that group of kids for sure.
So this next slide is just showing some of our kids at school and the activities that were happening with some of our school board members reading to them. But this is just depicting for students to be successful in school, they have to be in school. And we don't want any of our students missing out on any of our opportunities or experiences that we provide at school.
Yeah, and I would just go ahead and add to that for the attendance part. Obviously, having our children and students in class and being there to learn every day is the most important thing. But we also, it carries an economic factor with it as well. And as most of you probably are aware, we're funded on our average daily attendance. So, getting them there to be able to, fund the teachers and the supplies and the buses, all the things that we need to function as an organization is also important as well. So, we recognize that getting them there to learn is the most important thing, but being able to provide those things that help them learn the best we can makes a difference. Just as to put a number on it, a 1% reduction in our daily attendance, or in our annual attendance, would be about $1 million to the district. So it adds up fairly quickly if we maintain that.
I have a comment and a question. Positive reinforcement, I think, is way better than trying to force kids to go to school. However, unfortunately, in some cases, it's probably not the kids that are at fault. It's probably the parents, especially with some of the younger children. Is truancy just completely gone? I don't really know what the status of the law is. I may be a lawyer, but I don't know everything. So the thing is that we used to be able to at least put some pressure on parents. Is that completely gone, or where are we with that?
I would say it's substantially diminished. So we still take them to court. We still file truancy. We have juvenile case managers and dropout prevention specialists, and our assistant principals really work the process of sending letters and documenting, creating contracts, then ultimately taking them to court. But I would say the law is not as formidable as it once was, maybe 10 years ago. It's not quite as punitive. And so they go to court and they maybe figure out that, hey, may not want to come back. There's a conversation. It's not really much more than that. Not to suggest we don't do it. It's still, we still get, we have people that do it regularly. Our assistant principals and, like I said, our juvenile case managers, that is their primary job. So they work with elementaries and middle schools and high schools, and they're targeting, the kids that aren't in school. And they're working with the parents. They'll do home visits. They'll travel and make sure that if there's something there that is an obstacle, is there something we can do to overcome that? So in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily punitive till we get to that point. If we can get the relationship where they can communicate something's going wrong or they're having some kind of issues or something is happening, we can get them to school pretty easily.
So what do we do, Bryan, for the kids? The mom's gone to work at 6 and they miss the bus or miss a ride. How do we get them to the school? Now, I got 2 of them on my street.
And I can speak personally to this. We go pick them up.
We go pick them up.
We go pick them up. I picked up many kids, or that they don't have it's not even maybe that they did miss the bus. It may be raining and they don't want to walk to school.
Right.
We would pick them up. Our juvenile case managers have actually
So we'll
bring
get a
kids
white
to
fleet.
school.
So we've done that. I think to MC Harris as well to answer questions. I can think to specific examples of just using a white fleet that may be already stationed at the campus or calling transportation and getting a white fleet to go out. Or, we may have all picked up kids in our cars if we needed to be honest with you, that we would not recommend. But nonetheless, we're going to get the kids to school where we have to or get them home if we have to as well. So, that's definitely what we do.
So are we sending that message out so the parents know? Because when the kids
So we'll
call
call.
mom,
Yeah. So
she at work, she can't leave the job, so
Yeah,
they
so-
just stay at home.
So if they call the school and say, my child missed the bus, I don't have a way to get to school, we go pick them up.
So sometimes that is not as quick as we would like it to be, but through those relationships with classroom teachers or when the office becomes aware of it, that's where we can intervene. So sometimes they don't tell us maybe that that's what's going on, but a lot of times we'll figure it out.
Communication is key.
Is key, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Beasaw, may I ask you a question going back just a second on the utilization? So if we are steady for the next 10 years or so on our enrollment, does that mean our facilities as far as schools go are also okay for 10 years? Or does that not necessarily, I know we could have change, more high school students versus, but is that what that would mean?
Essentially, the way they have it projected right now, that would be true. And of course, we'll have them look at that. Every couple of years, we do a big full-blown study, so we're due for one again this time. And we'll see. And of course, there's things that change that come up in the community, and the community is aging, and the community is moving in different locations. Businesses come in. All those things change that. So, but as it was as the last projection, which was in 22-23. It looked that way at that point. But of course, that's something we always monitor and we need to be aware of. So
Right.
as things change, that's, something that they'll come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, would it be possible for you to share that information with the board? I've seen year-over-year comparisons between enrollment at the campus level, but it'd be nice to see what the threshold is of capacity and the percentage of enrollment at that campus.
Yes, sir. We can sure look at that and bring that forward.
Yeah, I agree, because I know our policy is 80 to 120, but I know we have some experience with going over has fairly dramatic effects.
Yeah.
So if we're encroaching anywhere around 100% on campus and it's projected to remain that, and that it needs to be a trigger before we get to 120. The other comment that I would like to add is when we look at the charts with the absences and the chronic absences, obviously there's 2 outliers that are there that kind of draw the attention very, very clearly. And they are definitely a part of our district. They definitely are part of the overall percentage. They definitely have to be there. But at many times I feel like those outliers also detract from the schools that are making huge gains and just looking at percentages, you don't necessarily get the feel, because if each school had the same number of students, then the percentages would
Right.
be easy to see.
One kid makes a big difference at a JJAP or DAP.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so percentages are kind of tough. So I think probably one thing that I would like to recommend for, kind of future is almost break them out into groups, whether they're elementary, middle school, whatever, and show where they are. Because I think that story also tells a lot that our kids want to be at school. They want to get there. I think that helps tell that story. And if we can be a level, be a feeder pattern, whatever, try to regroup some of those to showcase the highlights.
Instead of alphabetical.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I think it's also important to put current numbers in perspective with recent past, right? So if we look at 2020 to 2021 and where attendance was right after COVID,
Right.
and I mean, we are basically pretty close to what we were pre-COVID, I think.
We are. I think we were a little bit, about 95% overall district-wide. And actually, when I provide the data for the campuses, I give them the 3 years. So I give them 3 years for their overall attendance and 3 years for their chronically absent numbers. And I think at the end of last year, every campus had made great gains except for one, and it was very, very close. So it was very little difference, but yes.
Yeah, I just think it's hard as we think about, there was a moment in our history where school really was optional. I mean, 2019, 2020, and then 2020, 2021, it was just kind of a hot mess.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. McCall, to bring your point, I think to make your point even more, is that, look at MC Harris, their attendance rate is basically the same as it was last year, if not, maybe within a slight difference, but they're up 50 kids. So we've increased the total number of students there, and we've kept attendance at the same rate, which is pretty tremendous when you consider that's an at-risk campus. So a lot of those kids would have already been in that at-risk category in Bryan or Rudder, but now they're over at MC Harris. And so I think Milam in particular has kept that afloat, where they're able to be there, they're able to build those relationships. It feels more like a campus. So I appreciate you making that.
And I think that's a story worth telling
It is.
as well,
Yeah.
right? And understanding. But I think sometimes with those bar charts
Right.
laid out side by side, you just focus
Yes.
on the outliers.
You do.
Yeah, so true.
And at our conference we just got back from in San Antonio, Mr. Gonzalez had our table right up front, and the commissioner, Mike Morath, was right there. And I specifically asked him, after everybody could ask a question, and we were
She was the first in line. It was impressive.
Yes, I
She was
did,
there.
first in line. And I said, are you projecting, is there a way that we could go funding not being associated with average daily attendance and with your enrollment? And he said specifically, oh, no, average daily attendance funding is so tied into attendance. And in Texas, we're so geared toward good attendance. He said it won't ever not be associated with average daily attendance. So just a little side note.
yeah.
Question.
Any other questions? Well, I thank you for putting this in perspective. I know sometimes we hear words like fast growth in our community, and that has a very specific term when it comes to school districts. And I think what we're hearing you say is that we're relatively flat
Steady.
on attendance or enrollment, and that, the idea that we are gaining a great many number of students that will change our budget model moving forward unless the state does something drastically different with school finance, of course, that narrative just probably isn't so for us here in Bryan.
Exactly. That's very accurate.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
With that, we will move to our another information item, our 2020 bond project updates. And so we welcome Kevin Besaw to stay at the table to provide an update on that. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
And team,
I'm gonna make.
whoever.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
make Ms.
We're gonna
Montoya
chime in.
and Dr. Merrill
Yeah.
stay with me, so.
Moral support.
But yes, thank you. So this is our, the 2020 bond projects, which we've been working on. We like to use the phrase, we've kind of started with this in bond steering, the promises made, promises kept. We went through the bond steering process in the beginning, which was something a little bit I'd not been involved in, but was very important to Dr. Whitbeck at the time and Ms. Carabine to make sure that we got everybody's feedback that we could possibly get and kind of let the process work itself out, come organically as to what we felt like the district, the needs were, and what was most important to all the stakeholders involved. If you look at the listing there, that lists out the $175 million as we came forward, and eventually the board called that for an election, and the voters approved. We're grateful for that. Some of the things you see on there, the safety and security, and we're well into this process, moving through a lot of these things. The fire alarm replacements, shade structures, we'll be bringing pretty soon to close. The PA system upgrades are done. Buses, we have bought some. We still have some to purchase on that. The construction, the big items, the addition, Sadbury Intermediate School is well on its way. It's got 5th and 6th graders in it. They're working on phase 2 to finish that out. And of course, that was delayed a little bit because of the Ruby Halliburton, which that project is now up and going. The buses are running out of there. Our maintenance and operations people are running out of there, and we're about to move over the warehouse and food service components of that. SFA Annex was one of our first projects that's been done. Rudder classrooms have been used now for about a little over a year, I believe, year and a half. So all of those kind of things are all moving forward as we went through that, and we continue to do the bond steering process, rolled into the bond oversight process. So that group that was involved in that became bond oversight, and now they're the ones that we meet with basically on a quarterly basis to go over some of the projects, go over some of the things that are happening. If there's something that comes up that looks like it's going to require going to require a change or an adaptation to the plans, that kind of run that by that group first before bringing it maybe to the board to just get feedback from them, since they were involved in the beginning. You also see there's fine arts, priority maintenance there. That's going on, some of that this summer. The mechanical, plumbing, electrical, HVAC things, those were elementary and secondary schools were worked on this summer, wrapping some of those things up. And then, of course, land for Sadbury. And there was also, we added in bond contingency, which is fairly common in a bond. You never know exactly how it's going to play out, because as we did, this was 2020 bond. We are almost to 2025. So as you know, some things have changed since then. We began this process before COVID. There's been a little change in inflation and interest rates and those kind of things. So that's all, built into that. And so the $5 million contingency is based on, basically they usually use a percentage of that just to be sure that we can do that, all the projects as we get through them. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Montoya and let her go over a little bit of one of the prime projects, really the biggest in our bond for this time.
Yes. So the opening of our beautiful O.W. Sadbury Senior Intermediate School that took place last year with our 5th graders. And so now we're into phase 2, which includes in the back that parking area, as well as, of course, the addition of our 6th graders into Sadbury this school year. But that back area with the parking area and the play area to include both workout areas and a walking trail. So we're into phase 2 at this point right now.
Yeah, and that's going as planned. That should be working on wrapping that up come, I believe, in the spring. So we will be done with that project and and moving on.
Before
with
you
that.
get off Sadberry, one of the things, as someone who drives by Sadberry almost daily, sometimes more, is I know we've had some people complaining for a while about a big pile of soil, not dirt, soil, adjacent to Sadberry. And the reason that was there was because we were waiting to demolish transportation, so we couldn't do that until new transportation was built. And this may already be in here, so apologies if I'm overstepping. But one day I drove by and it was partially gone, the big pile of soil, and now it's completely spread. So that soil had a purpose. It was just waiting for, is my thought. But it's great to see progress.
Have you gotten a lot of calls, Julie, thanking you for that?
No, got none, but I did want to publicly share that that's now gone. So yay. Way to go, team.
And boy, is my garden looking good. No, not
Yeah, but that was all part of the project, and that would have been dirt that we would have had to purchase to work on the
Exactly.
second phase two.
And
so-
soil is expensive.
Very
Yeah.
expensive, you're right.
Done a project recently.
Yeah.
And I should probably know, would you go back to the list of the items under the bond? Yeah, so the 2 million, that was applied to the Halliburton purchase or not?
Yes, sir, yes.
So is the rest of the purchase amount in the construction and additions, or what was the final purchase price? I don't even remember anymore after all the things we went
Oh,
through.
on the land, it was roughly 4.5 million.
Okay, so
was
is the
the
rest of it in the construction and additions?
Correct, yeah, it'll
Okay.
be, yes, that will
Okay.
all be added into that
Okay.
on the final project,
All right.
yeah.
So 2 million of that is here, and then the rest of it is in the 98, or is not the total amount? Yeah.
Well, of course, that's all of the projects put together, the
Oh, okay,
98, so-
okay, I got you.
Yeah,
But yes, when we.
And these bullets are just some of the highlights. We didn't put all the projects in
Okay,
there. We
right.
put some of the more recent and some of the bigger ticket items listed.
And then, yeah, so we talked about the Halliburton project a little bit. There's some pictures of that, and we just had the ribbon cutting out there last week or week before. So, but they've been operational out there. They moved in, I believe, the last week of May, in between the end of school and the beginning of summer school. So, since transportation was a part of that, that had to be timed and moved pretty quickly to get them situated after they were done running routes for regular school and before summer school. So that all happened, and then that's been continuing to move out different departments as we've combined the departments under this one roof, and hopefully that should all be completed and everybody moved in before the end of this year. So that's definitely a positive, and of course we celebrate the naming of that with Miss Ruby Halliburton, who was a prime bus driver and employee for Bryan ISD for many, many years. So very proud of that fact as well.
And then the next project is the Sam Houston Elementary, the art room. So we have one happy art teacher over at Houston. So her room was fairly small, so this renovation gives her just the perfect spot to do art projects with the addition of a sink, and just the size alone has been great. So kids are enjoying it, teachers are enjoying it.
And this is another one of the items that was on there, the shade structures. Were completed during the summer, and that should be coming to the board for final closeout, I believe, at the next meeting. And then the last item on there is just the fencing projects, which were worked on this summer. There were some hang-ups a little bit with some of that, and so we continue to get that finished up. We do have a representative that's monitoring that on a daily basis and getting that fixed up. But they're as construction projects will sometimes, there were some various delays for weather, for supply chain issues, some wrong parts ordered on the hardware for the gates and things such as that. So we continue to monitor that and get that finished up as
I would like to thank them for getting someone to monitor that, and thank Ginger for getting on it, because I hated those kids didn't have anywhere to play. So thank y'all so much for making that happen in a timely fashion.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's, you know, we've gotten on it and gotten it, I believe, just about completed. So, but they're checking on it daily. So that's, you know, to try to monitor and get it completed as quick as we can. And the final thing there, so the projects that currently have been done and completed, at this point, we're at about 2.2 million in bond savings. Of course, the continued as we go through, most of them have come in, but most at or budget and at or on time. So we are pretty grateful again for the voters to approve these bond projects, and we're eager to finally get some of these wrapped up. But we've gotten the largest ones are just right on either done or just on the doorstep with Sadberry Intermediate getting to phase 2. Ruby Halliburton is in punch list at this time and getting most of them moved over. And the Rudder Classrooms was a large one. The SFA Annex was, of course, our first one, and that was a big win because of the design on that one. It was a big renovation project. So there was some contingency other than the $5 million built into that one, because once they got into that renovation, they had no idea really what they might find. And it was part of this building, basically, which is a very old building. There's places over by my office over there where there's 3 walls because they just built over the other. So, but that one came in considerably, just about $2.5 million under budget in itself. So there's been some of that, and then some have come over a little bit. The PA system was over a little, but as we continue on through, we feel like at this point we're very comfortable. We have a pretty good number on Sadberry. Our biggest project for this bond is going to come in. We believe probably a little over $1 million under budget. So there's good reason to believe that we're going to get all of our projects done and still possibly have a little bit of funding left over. So. We'll take that at this point, considering what we've been through with COVID and the inflation that we've had since then. We're pretty lucky in our bidding out of some of these projects before that all happened. And
Yeah,
so
and I don't call that luck. That's
I
not
was
luck.
about to say,
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, there were some very strategic decisions made early on when we went into that bond process once it was approved, to make sure we were well positioned. And I'm grateful for the team for bringing that to the board so that we could move appropriately. There are many districts out there that did a bond about the same time we did, and they're in a position where they can't finish. They ran out of money. So for us to be positioned where we have a little bit left over is truly amazing and a compliment to this team. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, it was just a pandemic.
We did not see the global pandemic coming, that's for sure.
No,
So
it is amazing that
Thank you,
y'all were able
Dr.
to.
Harlan, for recognizing that, because it was a lot of hard work and strategy. We had good architects and good construction contractors guiding us, so we landed on our feet very well.
And just you might be getting ready to go into this, but with that savings, right, once we get through kind of the substantial completion of that, there's a lot of additional projects that didn't make the cut, right? So with those savings, we have not just money sitting there that we won't use, but we can go back and plus some of those that were lower priority, now we're 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Now they're becoming a higher priority,
So they can be, okay, that's what I was going to ask exactly. So they can be used for other projects that were, as long as do they have to have been stipulated in the budget, or, I'm sorry, the bond, or?
Yeah, generally they write the referendum fairly broad, so that as long as we're using it for a construction facility, something to that effect.
just not athletics.
Just not athletics now anymore. But
Or teacher,
sorry,
and I would like to reiterate that we cannot pay, because
Yeah.
this is a question I got all the time was,
No.
well, if you have bond money left over, why don't you use that bond money?
No,
That was one of the first things I did learn when I was running, is that bond money cannot be used to pay salaries or anything else. It can only be used for whatever was written into the bond.
Yep. Operating expenses can't do it. Then a good example of that would be, we had a little bit left from the 2014 bond, which had designated in there Milam And so now the adjustment that we made, the move from the old MC Harris, we moved to Milam, we were able to use that bond money to do that project. So that is an example of what we can do with those things, and that's, I think a win for the district, absolutely.
It was a tremendous win. In fact, all the vestibules have been put up. It feels like, it's just really, you need to go back if you've not been. It's really remarkable what it feels like and what it looks like. The campus is very pleased to be in the community and being back in that building.
And I know that being on bond steering, a couple of bonds back, and then this one, we rate tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, according to the most prioritized things as needed. And so it's not like we can just go, oh, well, this popped up, let's spend it here. We have we've covered all tier 1s, maybe some tier 2s, and so it's pretty much even in writing some of the things that now will move up to use this money for. So it's not like it's a luxury and we're going to find the most luxurious thing out there to spend it on.
Well, and I'll add that when we move from bond steering, so bond steering is the group that helps us determine, do we need a bond, and if so, what are we going to put before the voters? Once a bond is passed, this district has engaged recently in a bond oversight committee. So I've served on bond oversight along with a couple of others. We have community members, parents, business leaders on there, lots of different folks. And so if there are changes kind of along the way, for whatever reason, those are going before bond oversight before they come to the board. So we're trying to all that is online if people are interested and want to see what we have put before those committees. That's all there transparently for people to see. But we are very appreciative of our voters giving us this approval. I too, had to run for reelection, this time last year. Feels like an eternity ago, but there's a lot of misconceptions by the public about what a bond is and what it does. I was told, well, we don't need to pass bonds, we just need to save our money like everyone else and spend it when we have it. That's just simply not how school finance works. If we want to do capital kind of improvements to structures and buildings, athletic facilities, those kind of things, a bond is is the designation of how we can do that. So grateful again for the leadership of the team and positioning us well where we may have decisions to make at some point about how to spend, hopefully, the saved dollars.
Exactly. Well said.
Any other questions?
Once upon a time, we could save money back when we could actually control our M&O tax rate, which we can no longer do. But yeah, we did save some money and build some schools with cash way back lots of years ago.
Well, I guess I should have said, in my time. That is not how it works.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Back then, the school only cost $20,000 though, David, so.
Awesome. All right.
Really needed one
Any
more,
other
sure.
questions about, or comments about our 2020 bond projects? Okay. Again, I hope the take-home message is that on time, for the most part, close to under budget, should see some bond savings, and all projects are moving along toward completion. We look forward to approving those if we've not seen them yet. All right.
Thank you.
Well, we'll now move to our last information item. We welcome our Director of Bilingual and ESL Services, Dr. Adams Molina, to talk to us about bilingual and English as a second language program review.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time today. I wanted to preface this information, this evaluation that I'm about to present to you by saying thank you, and I'm very, very excited to share with you some great things that are happening in our bilingual ESL migrant and new arrival center programs. Times are tough right now. You're going to see in some of the when we talk about the state assessments and so forth, but we keep on keeping on and doing what's right for kids. And I just wanted to preface this program evaluation that's required to do every single year by the Texas Education Agency, Texas Education Code 29. Having said that, I'm happy to be doing this right now because we have some really great things going on that you need to know about. So we'll go ahead and get started. Every year, if a school district has bilingual or ESL programs, we're required to do a program evaluation and present that to the board. And what we're going to be looking at today is the academic and English language progress of our emergent bilingual students, our English language learners, the number of students that have reclassified as English proficient, the frequency and scope of comprehensive professional development that we offer to our teachers that are not certified currently, but that are seeking certification to provide those services to our students, and the number of teachers for whom a bilingual exception and or waiver is or will be filed for this year. Currently, we serve over 5,800 emergent bilingual students in this school district. We say emergent bilingual students it kind of glides off the tongue, but I really want you guys to understand that that means English language learners. 1 out of every 3 students here in the district is learning English right alongside their content area. So we're not only teaching them English, but we're teaching them content. But 30% of the students here in the school district are emergent bilingual students or English language learners. We have a variety of programs to meet the needs of the students. Primarily, we have our transitional early exit program, which is in pre-K through 6th grade on 13 campuses, and we serve a little bit over 2,100 emergent bilingual students in that program. We also have a two-way dual language program, and I'm very excited. This is another reason why I'm excited. I needed to make a change to this slide because now it is pre-K through 6th grade. Last year, legislation came about from the state requiring that we implement pre-K or two-way dual language at our lowest possible grade level, and of course that being pre-K. So this year, we went ahead and started implementing that right away. So thank you to Dr. Warren, Dr. Ibarra, and Daniela Garza at Henderson Elementary that said that she would like to pilot our new pre-K two-way dual language program at Henderson. And this first year out, we started off with 2 classrooms, and they are full. They are 23, 24 in each one of the classrooms, and I think we had a slight wait list, but the parent response, the community response, they were super excited to have that additional year in such a wonderful program.
May I just ask a quick, so just want to make sure to clarify, the two-way dual language is where you have students learning where they do half the day in Spanish and half in English, or how does is that correct, so that you have students that want to learn Spanish that don't know it, and then
the two-way dual language program is basically looking at the composition of the classroom, where 50% of the students are Spanish speakers and 50% of the students are English speakers, and they're learning alongside of each other, and the content is 50-50. So half the content is in English, half the content is in Spanish. So, for example, in 6th grade, they have a week in English instruction, and then a week in Spanish instruction, a week in English, a week in Spanish. So we look at that depending on the grade level and the age of the student. So in, say, for example, 1st grade, they go to their English teacher, who is most likely self-contained and provides all the content area in English, and then the next day they'll go to their content area teacher that teaches all in Spanish. So they'll have one day with English, one day with Spanish, one day with English. So hence the 50-50 model, and then the two-way dual language. But yes, great question.
Thank you.
So we have our two-way dual language on 4 campuses. Looking at Henderson now, that houses our pre-K two-way dual language, at Johnson, Crockett, and Jane Long Intermediate. Currently, we have 730 students. 361 of the students are English language learners, and we're very excited, and I want to use this time to kind of plug an event coming up in May. It can't come soon enough because we love to celebrate these students, but every year we have an increasing number of graduates that start from pre-K, before in K, but now pre-K, all the way through sixth grade, that stay in the program. Their parents, and my colleague loves to say, they hold the line. They stay in the program even when times are getting tough and you're learning how to read and do so many academic, just academic endeavors in both languages. It's tough, but our parents and our students are staying, and we celebrate those students that are graduating the program in sixth grade, and they also have the opportunity to take the Avant test, which last year 100% of our students passed and went on to receive high school credit. So if you're in a dual language program, this is how you get high school credit at sixth grade. If you're in a dual language program, complete that dual language program, you have the opportunity to take this assessment and get high school credit. So the kids that graduated from the dual language program, 100% of them were able to secure that credit for high school. So we are super proud about them, with them on that fact. And so we'll be celebrating another group of students at the beginning of May. So hopefully we'll be able to see you guys there. It's super fun. We have our mariachi bands welcoming the parents, and the kids are just phenomenal. And it's a wonderful celebration.
If you'll make sure that's on our calendar, Ms. Carabine or Ms. Tiffany, I would love to go to
I
that.
think we put it on the high impact for May.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, because we're moving it this year, right, out of Jane Long to,
Yes, it's a little bit too big for Jane Long, so we had to find a bigger venue. So it'll be at the PAC Center this
Okay,
year.
great.
So
it's a good
very
problem to
nice.
have. We've
Yes,
outgrown the
absolutely.
previous
Nice
space.
problems to have, yes.
So did they get one full credit? Good. Wow.
One full credit, so very excited. And the parents love that, the kids, are excited about that, and, but it's difficult, but it's so worth it, and we're producing bilingual students, so very excited for that. We also have our English as a second language, our ESL program, on all campuses, pre-K through 12, with a little over 1,600 English language learners or emergent bilingual students. And then this year, with our NAC Center, our new arrival center, now we have 5 campuses. I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Merrill, Dr. Ibarra, Dr. Warren, Ms. Carabine, for recognizing that we had a situation that where we can step up and address the needs of a very vulnerable group of students. We had students coming into the country that were overaged and undercredited, and we were able to set up a NAC program at MC Harris, which was a huge win. So now we have the capacity to serve up to 20 students in the program. Right now, I believe we have 11 that are enrolled, and it's a perfect fit for them. We have a profile outline for the student, and basically it's 16 plus with less than 5 credits would be an ideal candidate for MC Harris. So we have a very skillful teacher that's there working with the students, acquiring their English, getting their credits so that they can graduate. So we were very excited to implement that this year at MC Harris. So that is an additional campus, one of our 4, so now we're up to 5 NAC campuses.
Is that explained to the parents and the students by the counselor when they come in, by a counselor, I guess, when they come in to
Yes, sir.
enroll?
It's very individualized. When the students come in and they qualify for the NAC program, there's, obviously they're going to meet the criteria to be in the program, and then their goals are discussed with them, and it's a collaborative conversation on what would be the best placement for the student. And if students are looking for a traditional 4-year program, is that actually possible, at this time because of overaged and undercredited? So these conversations are being had with the students and the parents and the school personnel to make sure that the best decision is arrived to for that particular child.
Great, thank you.
And this year, last year we had 185 NAC students. This year we have 315, which is a 70% increase. So the little ones are coming, and now we have students from Afghanistan, from Haiti. We had to really start, well, not start, but really help the teachers with their ESL, strategies and so forth at schools like Bowen and so forth that are getting students in their classrooms that speak French or speak Farsi. So really trying to build capacity with our teachers on how to serve all students across the board. Just want to talk to you for a few minutes about TELPAS. When we're looking at our program evaluation, we have to present information on the English language performance of our students, and that is measured by the TELPAS test from the state of Texas. It's a federal mandate that we look at measuring the yearly progress of our students as they're acquiring English. So this particular assessment, the students are tested in 4 domains, all 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The listening and speaking are online as well as the reading and the writing. When we're looking at K through 1, it's a holistic observational assessment by the teacher. They're not on the computer taking the assessments, but then at 2nd grade, 2nd through 12th grade, then the online assessment is where the students are showing their proficiency. It is definitely worth mentioning that back in 2018, the test changed, and when they combined reading or listening and speaking together, then they used an automated scoring engine that kind of an AI component that looks at the student's speaking component and seeing how they score on that. Prior to 2018, 50% of the students in grades 4 through 12 were scoring at the advanced high level, which is the highest one that you can make. And then after 2018, only 10% of the students were scoring at the advanced high level. We have never recovered from below, making it out of the 10% range. So that it's frustrating because it's not a natural environment. You have students speaking into a microphone and then an AI component grading their speaking skills. So it's very challenging, but at this time, we have a program in place that gives the kids practice when it comes to that. So we acknowledge that there's a difficulty with that type of assessment, but we're doing everything we possibly can to prepare the kids in order to be successful, even working with a microphone and so forth to measure their speaking proficiency.
Okay, so I have to ask this question.
Yes, yes.
So when it says it's a federal requirement,
Mhm.
it's a federal requirement that the state annually monitor progress. It is not a federal requirement that the state use TELPAS and AI to determine how our students are doing. That is state imposed by Texas.
Yes, every state chooses their assessment that they're wanting to, obviously that they're going to use to show that annual yearly progress of English language proficiency.
And as in your position as an expert in this, do you believe that the testing is accurately reflecting what our students know and can do?
I do not. I do not think it is accurately measuring what our students can actually do. I think when we're looking at, especially that change in 2018 and how we were never really able to recover, and having the number of students from 50% on advanced high down to 10%. This past year in 4th grade, it was 7% of the students on that higher level of language proficiency at 7%. We haven't been able to make those gains back to where we were prior to actually implementing the AI component or the online speaking component.
Okay.
Well,
Ms. Barbara. Welcome,
Yes.
Dr. Ibarra.
Well, and before you answer, I did want to throw this in there too. I typically ask this question. If I'm sure you don't just look at ours in isolation. You look around the state of Texas. What's happening elsewhere? Oh,
Stole my
He
thunder.
beat-
That's
he
exactly
beat
the
you to
point.
It is definitely, I was looking at, at the state level for 4th grade, only 9% of the students scored advanced high in the speaking domain, and 5% on the writing domain, which is now AI as well. So it is, it's a reality, and again, we recognize that it is high-stakes assessment. It might not be the best way to evaluate a language of a student. However, are we doing what we need to do in order to provide practice, provide resources? We absolutely are. So we're in the game. We are in the game, but it's the rules are a little disheartening, to say the least.
I bet that's a hard conversation when parents know the ability of their children and they score low like this, and they said something to the effect of, well, we brought them, to the United States here for better education, and we know our child is very, very smart. How can this happen? I mean, I just can't even imagine being in some of those LPACs.
Go ahead, Dr. Ibarra, I know.
Actually, Mr. Stasny seriously took my whole point, so I'm good. No, my point was just that we saw back at that time when they made the shift in the assessment across the state, the results were abysmal. And they have not rebounded, as Dr. Molina mentioned, and they continue to be underperforming what we believe the students are actually capable of. Further, that also prevents students from being reclassified and exiting bilingual services who are proficient. So that self-fulfilling prophecy of never achieving becomes a real concern, going back to the child and just taking care of the whole child, like Dr. Molina mentioned as well. So now with the additional add-in to the writing component also being graded and sourced in that same manner as we saw with the STAR assessment this year, it's caused a great deal of concern regarding its legitimacy and validity. All that to say, she's absolutely right. We put it aside and we keep educating the child in front of us and moving them as far as we can in the time that we have with them.
Well, and I appreciate certainly that, y'all are trying to do what's best for children and move them all forward in the ways that you can. What I want noted for the public is that our state continues to enforce things upon our children, our most vulnerable children, that makes it more difficult for them to achieve in the ways that we know that they can. That for me is unconscionable, particularly when we're spending, I'm assuming, another millions of dollars, if not billions, on a testing system that is not serving our students.
There's also additional assessment for the students to take during the academic year when they're already being assessed on reading and writing, to do it secondarily as a part of language acquisition along with listening and speaking. It's also wrapped into our accountability system, and so all of it kind of, it becomes compounding for the child as well as the institution.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Soapbox.
So I'm proud to announce that on TELPAS, we had 52% of our campuses had 50% or higher the number of students growing one proficiency level. That's what you're looking for. There's 4 proficiency levels: beginning, intermediate, advanced, and advanced high. And if students start with us in kinder, they would be on a beginning level, progress to first grade, intermediate, second grade, advanced, third grade, advanced high. So when we're looking at 3rd and 4th grade, we really start looking at the advanced or advanced high level for proficiency. So our students are making gains towards that 1-year proficiency growth each year. So that included 9 of our elementary schools, and 7 out of them had 60% or higher of their students actually making that 1-year gain. So that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful.
In spite of a faulty test, they're still doing okay.
And despite, we are in this and we are winning. Yes, we are. And then also with the STAR assessment, when we're looking at academic achievement, for the STAR assessment, we looked at how we did compared to the state. Our EB students compared to the emergent bilingual students in the state. And we saw that basically we outperformed the state in multiple performance levels in reading and language arts, math, science, and social studies. So we are constantly reflecting on, are we doing what's right? Do we have the best programs in place? And are we making the gains that we need to show student achievement and do what's right for our students? So some highlights there. The third grade emergent bilingual students outperformed the state in reading and language arts and math and approaching meets and masters, all three grade levels, or all three performance levels. And then for the English 2, we outperformed the state by 7 percentage points, which is, again, quite an achievement. So Dr. Ibarra mentioned reclassification, and basically this is the process that if a student meets these criteria, and we'll talk a little bit more about those, then they are determined to be English proficient, where they can be in a monolingual or an English-only classroom and be successful and be able to hold their own and really thrive. So when we're looking at reclassification of students, we're looking at their score on TELPAS, and before you had to have advanced high in all 4 language domains, all 4 had to have advanced high in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Now, and then with that criteria in place, we had 67 students that reclassified in 2022, 2023. Now the rules have changed, and we're looking at a composite score right now. So basically, a student can get advanced and at least one of those, but still have a composite score of advanced high. So this past year, we were able to reclassify 396 students.
So that was a change by the state?
That
in
was a
what
change
it
by
took
the
to be advanced high?
Yes,
Okay.
moving from advanced high in all 4 domains to an advanced high composite.
Okay.
So 3 out of the 4 is, it can be,
Yes,
they can
and
have one
most
advanced in
likely,
any of them?
we will find a pattern that it would be in the speaking for those students that was in the advanced proficiency level that they were able to reclassify, because the speaking is so, it's not very natural. It's very, it's a challenge. It's a part of the
It's the
assessment.
test that's the challenge. It's the
Yes.
it's hard to
And
score
they're having to
advanced.
They're having to speak into the
Speak into
computer
the
now.
microphone, yes.
Yes, imagine a young child having to speak into a microphone.
In another language?
And then,
Yeah, in a
yeah,
different
you've
language.
got an 8-year-old having to do it that way. It's complicated.
Let's see. So, moving on, what are the components of our successful program? Well, we really, really try to leverage our Title III funds. They're federal grant funds, and we use that for basically providing high-quality resources and our instructional coaches that are invaluable to go out and help the teachers, model for the teachers, coach for the teachers. We are modeled after the C&I component, where there's instructional coaches with the knowledge that it takes. We're very few but mighty in our department, but the instructional coaches are key to helping the teachers really deliver effective instruction, and again, modeling and coaching through that. We also have Vista Higher Learning, which is our new arrival center curriculum, and we have Summit K-12, so thank you guys very much for that. Right now, we have over 2,500 kids on the platform, and including 18 campuses. Even some of our campuses that are not bilingual, campuses like Bowen and Houston and Mitchell, they are using the program for their ESL kids, which is phenomenal. That's absolutely what you want to see. And then we have Sidelets for our professional development materials. Sidelets is top notch. We just brought them out last Monday on the Professional Development Day and trained over 100 teachers at SFA alone with a high yield ESL strategies for our emergent bilingual students. So it was a wonderful day. The campus was fully represented. They have a high population of DOI teachers, so we're really trying to get them the skills that they need to serve the students that are in their classrooms. I think that's all that I have for you guys today, and unless you have any additional questions.
I do have a quick question. I know we're going to discuss the ESL teachers with giving them a waiver.
Yes.
So at our conference, I just want to show that we did learn something at the conference. I went to one of the presentations, and they stated that Spanish-speaking students are much more affected by non-certified teachers in their area. Is that because we just don't have ESL teachers? Is that true? And if it's true, is it because there's just no one that is, this is why we're asking for the waiver. Is it true that there are more non-certified teachers teaching bilingual students? Do you know that?
Actually, when you're looking at teacher shortage, it's across the board.
Okay.
But when we do have the DOI provision, it doesn't give us the opportunity, if you will, to have a non-certified teacher in our special programs. So when we're looking at our bilingual programs, special education or pre-K, we cannot have DOI people and teachers in those positions. So that really doesn't impact to a certain degree with our transitional early exit, but it does impact with ESL. So yes, you're absolutely right. When we're looking at DOI teachers, we're constantly talking about figuring out a pathway. We've started talking to Texas A&M University and looking at teachers that already have a degree, but that want to go back and become certified. And I was talking to Dr. Barr the other day, and we have quite a few DOI teachers in the district, and there's, I think, 20 or 30 that are actually going back and seeking their degree through an alternative certification program. So we love our DOI teachers, and we're here to help and support them, but we will be filing some exceptions and, with DOI teachers in some of those positions as well.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to weigh in for just a second, just to remind anyone who may be listening, DOI is District of Innovation, which we are, and we applied several years back to waive the requirement to have credentials for teaching certification in particular. But just to reiterate, we're not allowed to use those waivers for bilingual special education or pre-K. But instead, I guess you're about to talk about the waivers.
Slightly. And all of our District of Innovation teachers do hold a degree. They just may not hold the certification or are in the process of obtaining that certification. In particular to the ESL waivers, Dr. Molina is going to speak to this in a little bit, but it does tie into all of this. Some of those teachers are certified in English language arts, but they're lacking the ESL supplemental certification. Oftentimes that happens because they're new to our district and their prior district did not require them to have it, because they didn't have ESL students in their classrooms. So, or the schedule changed and now that particular teacher does have ESL students in their classroom, which means they have to hold the credential this year. Yes. So Georgiana's team works with them to help them obtain that certification over the course of the year. So typically you won't see a teacher reoccurring on that list. You'll see new teachers coming in or a shift in the master schedule causing new teachers to come on that ESL exceptions list. And I know that's part of your upcoming agenda item, but they are in fact certified in most cases, and they're working on their ESL supplement. But for some, it is a District of Innovation provisional kind of situation, and we are working with them to get into an alternative certification program. Ms. Sisinski works with that.
Great, thank you.
Somewhere on a previous slide, it says something about exception or waiver. What's the difference?
For the bilingual programs, if we have a teacher that's not certified with their bilingual supplemental, then it's a bilingual exception. And if they're not certified in ESL, then it's an ESL waiver.
Okay.
Elementary needs to have the bilingual certification. Secondary has to have the ESL.
Okay. Thank you.
It's complicated. Yeah.
It's from the state, so yes.
I think David and I are like, oh yeah, okay, yes, perfect.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
That wraps up our information items. We'll now move to citizen comments. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes, and comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. Ms. Lee, do we have any comments today? Thank you. So there being none, we will move into our regular agenda items. First, we'll start with business services. Consider approval of a resolution to nominate individuals to be on the ballot for board of directors to the Brazos Central Appraisal District. We welcome Mr. Besaw, our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Today we're entertaining this resolution for the Brazos Central Appraisal District. The Brazos Central Appraisal District sets the values for the properties within the district, and that makes up the basis for each taxing entity to then levy taxes to collect for revenue. Currently, the five entities, or main entities under the Brazos Central Appraisal District are both school districts, Bryan and College Station, both cities, Bryan and College Station in the Brazos County. The main job of the directors of the appraisal district is to, one, hire the chief appraiser, two, they set the budget for the appraisal district, and then they appoint the appraisal review board, who hears the disputes on property values that come in. Prior to 2023, actually July 22nd of 2023, each entity would go through a process where we would appoint those board of directors to the appraisal district. Currently, and as of July 2023, that was changed so that part of the board of directors for the appraisal district would be actually elected positions that went through the normal general election process. And then the remaining positions would be chosen by the taxing entities from a group that was nominated by those taxing entities. So instead of us just appointing our own nominees or our own appointees, we will nominate people, and then the taxing entities themselves will then take the ballot and set those, actually do an election on those appointees. So that's changed a little bit from how we used to do it. Instead of just appointing, now we nominate, and then all the entities will cast a ballot, and that will happen. They'll prepare the ballot on October 30th based on the number of nominees that they receive. We will get that ballot back and bring it back to the board to place those votes. Robertson County has been doing this that way for a little while, but this is new for the Brazos Appraisal District. Currently, we have two appointees who terms expire December 31, and that's Mr. Bill Lero and Kyle DeWitt. Mr. Lero, I reached out to him, and he's asked not to be nominated and wants to thank the board for allowing him to serve for over 30 years on the Brazos Central Appraisal District Board. He says, I've enjoyed it, but I think I've done my bit, so thank you. And then I talked to Mr. Kyle DeWitt, and he has agreed to accept the Bryan ISD nomination, should that be the board's desire to move forward.
I move approval of the attached resolution nominating Kyle DeWitt to represent Bryan ISD in the election for the Board of Directors for the Brazos Central Appraisal District.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Waller and seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
Can I
And
ask a question? I'm just wondering about the appointed. This is just for the election, right? That we
Correct.
just did this, but there's still 5 appointed, so are we?
Well, there's a nomination. So this is a nomination,
For the
and
election.
each taxing entity can nominate up to 5 people. So we're not limited to just the one.
Right,
But we could do, can do from 1 to 5.
but 3 are being elected, the other 5 are still being appointed. How does the appointment process work? Are we supposed
No,
to still?
The remaining are going to be will be elected by the taxing entities.
Okay,
We'll put forward our nominations, College Station puts forward theirs, the city and all that. Then the appraisal district will prepare a ballot and submit that back to us. And then the board will then vote on those, and the 5 that get the highest number of votes will win.
okay.
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
well, and many thanks to Mr. Bill Lero for his many, many years of service in this role. We appreciate that, and we're grateful that we've had at least one who's interested in volunteering for that. So again, another volunteer unpaid position. So any other comments on that? Appreciate y'all
Thank you.
making the motion. Thank you, Mr. Besaw. Next, we'll move to teaching and learning. Discuss and consider approval of bilingual exceptions. Here we go again. And English as second language waivers for 2024, 2025. We welcome our Executive Director of Special Programs, Ms. Jennifer Warren, to help us through this.
Good afternoon. Yes, so with our bilingual exceptions and our ESL waivers, what we are requesting from the board is to move forward with our request to TEA to approve those teachers that we have in the classroom serving our bilingual students that are lacking that one credential to either be ESL certified or bilingual certified.
Any questions or comments before we entertain a motion?
Yes, I have a very important, is it Dr. Warren now?
It is now Dr. Warren.
Dr.
Thank you.
Warren, I think I said that last time, but didn't include it today.
Just wanted to give her credit.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I move approval of the bilingual exceptions and ESL waiver reports as presented and authorize the administration to make any necessary adjustments to the submission as new data becomes available.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. It's been moved by Mr. Gonzalez and seconded by Ms. Binford. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Okay. Did I skip one? No. It was listed as two things, wasn't it? Maybe it's just on my sheet. Maybe it's, let me check on
The
it.
first one had Dr. Molina as a person.
No, no, there were just, okay, my notes, are different than what's posted on here, so we're good. All right, so that, takes care of all of our action items? No, there's one
There's
more?
one more. There's one
Okay.
more.
Number two.
How am I confused? There's two
contract.
under teaching and learning. All right, one, so I know what happened. Only one of mine had like the annotation on it for recommend a motion. So let me move my note up here. So that was Mr. Gonzalez and Ms. Binford. All right, so next, we're going to discuss and consider approval of special education contracted services over 50,000. And we continue to welcome Dr. Warren.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. Today I will be asking for the board's approval for spending an amount over $50,000 for contracted services for special education assessment. What we have done in the past that you are very familiar with is almost a cyclical process where we have a vacant position and we come to the board and ask to use that funding that we have for the vacant position to move it over into contracted services so we can contract and have someone from outside the district come in and serve our students. And then students are served. But unfortunately, what we find is by the time we can make it through the process of getting to the board and communicating back and getting contracts set, we lose that candidate. So then you have that situation where I come back to the board with a new candidate and it's just this vicious cycle. So Dr. Ibarra and I put our heads together, and I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but we determined a better route to move forward would be to bring a overall or an overarching contract to the board to where you approve a certain amount of funds that we have already budgeted for these vacancies and move the entire sum to vacancies, from vacancies over to contracted services, where we already have relationships with many vendors. And as soon as a viable candidate comes up, we interview them and we feel like they would be a good fit, we can go ahead and say yes, rather than waiting to bring it back to the board. I think there are some important things that you need to know about this. Number one is we can always terminate a contract if we find an employee that has applied through the Bryan ISD portal and we want to hire them. We don't have to continue using contracted services. It's there so that our students are being served, but if we have a viable candidate, we can always pull back with following the right termination clause in our contract. The other thing too is what we're requesting is the amount of funds for the approved positions that we already have. So earlier this year, you approved $630,000 with Candor, one of our vendors, and we have tapped into them and they have been able to utilize most of the funds that we have set aside for them to come in and serve our students with speech services. What we're requesting is the additional vacancies that we have to move the remainder of that into contracted services and for you to approve that remaining $360,000 for us to go ahead and use for contracted services. That is not above what we've already anticipated if we were able to fill our positions. So we're not increasing the budget, rather that we're just asking to use it in a different way.
What's a little confusing on this, but I think I understand it, is we're sort of hiring vendors, but in reality, it's the individual that we're contracting with instead of the vendor itself, because we don't just say we're hiring you and you just give us somebody. We have to approve that individual. So I guess the contract's still with the vendor, but it's only for that particular person that we're wanting.
In some ways, it depends on how the contract is written. So for example, with Candor, we have a large contract with them, $630,000, and that would provide to us about 5 speech-language pathologists. They have only been able to provide us with 4, but let's say that one of those that they approved, one of the 4, is no longer able to serve in their role. They can replace that person without us having to come to the board because you approved the vendor, not the person, but they still have to go through our HR process for fingerprinting, background check, and an interview process with us to ensure that we have a viable candidate serving our students.
So in all cases, we have the right to approve the individual or not?
Every case.
All right.
Every case we interview, they go through our HR process, and we ensure that we have a valid candidate.
This provides additional flexibility where we might pick from any one of the vendors that's on the attached list to contract with given services that are needed. Oftentimes, as Jennifer has mentioned, we'll come back and say, well, they ended up not having as many candidates as they thought they would have, and we ask for a new partnership with a new entity. And we keep coming back, and it can look like it's multiple contracts when it's the same amount of money the whole time. This allows us to move more swiftly with those interviews and that procurement, and not miss out on candidates that can immediately start serving students.
And this is another one of those areas where there are just tons of candidates out there waiting to
Yes.
find a job, right?
Right. You know, it does provide for some creative solutions. We have one vendor that once they found out this was the direction we were going to go and we could make a quicker decision once we interviewed, they're more likely to work with us now, because in the past we might have lost a candidate one right after the other, and so they kind of quit sending us people. But now that they know that we might be able to move in this direction and we could place someone quickly, they're more likely to send us candidates for this area.
It sounds like it's one of those areas where we just have to be positioned to be nimble.
Correct.
I move approval of the special education and contracted services agreement as presented.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Stasny, second by Mr. Bryan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, and apologies for my confusion on the 2 things you were doing. All right, we will now move into closed session since we've completed our action items. The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.074, .071, .0821, and .087. No voting will take place in the closed meeting, and any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussion in the closed session will occur after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. The time is now 1:35 p.m.
Nap in here or what? You had the lights pulled?
Yeah, y'all didn't expect us back this quickly. The good news is y'all can all go home after this, so that,
All right. The board reconvened in open session at 2:18 PM. No action was taken in closed session. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 2:18 PM. Thank you all.